The courtroom is silent. Not the silence of a pause, but the silence of an end. The man stands alone, his feet planted on a floor that feels like polished glass. Ahead, a throne of light burns with such intensity that it bleaches the color from the surrounding darkness. There are no lawyers here to speak for him. There is no pile of evidence to review, no stack of documents to plead his case. Every excuse he practiced, every justification he carefully constructed over a lifetime, dissolves in the heat of that radiance. He tries to speak, but the air is too thin, too heavy with the gravity of his own history. The man looks down at his hands, then back at the throne. The weight of his own existence presses against his chest, far heavier than any stone. He realizes that the time for maneuvering has passed. There is only the light, the silence, and the record of a life laid bare. He takes a breath, but it catches in his throat. The final accounting has begun, and there is nowhere left to look but forward. The light of the throne fades, replaced by the dense, humid air of a garden. Sunlight filters through thick leaves, casting long, fractured shadows across the forest floor. A man and a woman press their backs against the rough bark of a towering tree, their chests rising and falling in shallow, jagged rhythms. They do not look at each other. They look at the ground, where their own shadows seem to betray their presence. A sound ripples through the garden, a footfall on dry earth, the snap of a twig. It is not the sound of an animal. It is the sound of an approaching presence they once knew as a comfort, but now recognize as a threat. They crouch lower, pulling their arms tight against their bodies, as if trying to shrink away from the open space. The sense of exposure is absolute. They have reached for something they were forbidden to touch, and the consequence is a sudden, crushing weight of accountability. The air vibrates. A voice calls out, clear and resonant, echoing against the stone and the timber. It is a question that demands an answer. In that moment, the first boundary of human history is crossed, and the long, weary path of judgment begins. Centuries blurred into a cycle of decay. Empires rose on foundations of ambition, only to crack and slide into the dust. Great stone walls crumbled under the weight of their own arrogance, and the earth itself seemed to recoil from the rot of human choices. Floods surged across the plains, turning fertile valleys into churning, muddy graveyards. Cities that once echoed with music grew hollow, their gates left to swing in the wind. Amidst the chaos, a different sound emerged. On street corners, in the shadow of half-ruined pillars, solitary figures appeared. Their voices were raspy, worn thin by years of shouting into the indifference of the crowd. They did not speak of profit or politics. They pointed to the cracks in the foundations and the stains on the hands of the passers-by. The day is coming, they warned, their fingers trembling as they gestured toward an unseen horizon. They spoke of a light that would penetrate every dark alley, every locked cellar, and every whispered lie. Their persistence became a physical irritation to those who lived in the shadows. They stood their ground, refusing to retreat, driven by the certainty that every secret kept in the dark would eventually be dragged into the unforgiving brilliance of the final day. The horizon shifts from the ruins of empires to the dry, sun-baked roads of Galilee. A man named Jesus stands amidst a gathering crowd, his presence drawing the silence inward like a held breath. He does not speak of kings, taxes, or the collapse of borders. He speaks of the hidden architecture of the heart. He points to the way a secret thought leaves a mark as deep as any public crime. The air grows heavy, thick with the sudden, uncomfortable realization that there is no place to hide from a gaze that sees motive as clearly as action. He moves his hands, sketching the image of a shepherd standing at the end of a long day. The task is simple, yet final. The shepherd begins to divide the flock, separating the sheep from the goats with a slow, deliberate motion. There is no debate, no appeal, and no hesitation. One side is defined by the warmth of compassion, the other by the coldness of cruelty. The crowd stands frozen, the dust of the road settling around them as the weight of the parable sinks into their bones. Each person looks at their own hands, measuring their past choices against the coming sorting. The divide is not geographical. It is a fracture running directly through the center of every soul. The focus narrows to a cramped, candlelit room. The Apostle Paul hunches over a scroll, the nib of his pen scratching against the dry parchment. His hand trembles, not from age, but from the raw impact of the truth he is recording. He writes that every person, regardless of status or deed, has fallen short of the standard. The weight of this realization fills the room, cold and absolute. There is no one left to claim innocence. The ledger of human history is stained beyond repair. Then, the scene pulls back, dissolving the walls of the room. The narrative pivots sharply. The focus shifts to a rugged, wooden cross standing stark against a darkened sky. It is not an end, but a violent, final resolution. Beside it, a stone slab lies pushed aside, revealing a hollow, empty tomb. This is the bridge across the chasm of judgment. Where there was only the cold requirement of law, a different path opens. The sacrifice offered on the wood and the silence of the vacant grave serve as a pivot point for history. Mercy moves into the seat of justice, offering a way for those who have stumbled to find their footing. The air, once sharp with the scent of impending judgment, begins to clear, revealing a narrow, unexpected way forward. The narrative shifts again, pulling back from the tomb to a vast, silent expanse. A great white throne emerges, its radiance so absolute that it strips the color from the surrounding void. There is no horizon, only the towering presence of the seat. Then, the books appear. They are not merely scrolls of ink, but records that pulse with the memory of every breath taken by every soul. One by one, the seals break. The sound is like dry leaves skittering across stone. As the pages turn, every hidden motive, every whispered grudge, and every act committed in the dark is projected into the light. There is no blurring of detail. The record captures the exact intent behind the deed. A man stands before the throne, watching as the pages reveal his own history. He sees a word spoken in anger, a thought buried in the back of his mind, and a choice made to ignore the suffering of another. The cold clarity of the documentation is relentless. Every secret, once guarded behind the walls of his own heart, is now laid bare for the entire expanse to see. The atmosphere vibrates with the pressure of this total exposure. Nothing remains locked away. The light reaches into the deepest corners of his character, leaving him completely, terrifyingly revealed. The light from the throne intensifies, becoming a searing heat that demands the truth. Now, the transformation begins. It starts with the names. The titles once held with such pride, the positions, the accolades, the hard-won status begin to flicker. They do not fade slowly. They burn away like mist under a noon sun. A crown, a golden seal, the memory of an empire built by hand. They dissolve into vapor. The prideful who stand in the glow find their anchors slipping. The influence they exerted on earth loses its weight, drifting into nothingness. There is no armor of reputation left to hide behind. The fire of truth acts as a filter, separating the core of the person from the accumulation of their worldly life. One by one, the masks fall. The man watches as his own history of pursuit is reduced to ash. What he thought was solid, the steel of his ambition, the stone of his accomplishments, proves to be nothing more than brittle clay. He is no longer a leader, a beggar, or a merchant. He is simply a person, stripped of every earthly defining mark. The silence that follows is absolute. The theater of human identity has been dismantled, leaving only the raw, exposed reality of his own character standing in the white heat. The man stands trembling in the center of the vast expanse. He looks at his hands, expecting to find the strength he spent a lifetime building, but there is only emptiness. The years of labor, the relentless climbing, the hoarding of influence, the pursuit of things that promised permanence, all of it now reveals itself as vanity. It was a structure built on sand, and the tide has finally come in. He looks toward the throne, his throat tight, the air thick with the weight of the coming verdict. The realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. He cannot save himself. He drops to his knees, the impact echoing through the silence. He does not offer explanations. He has none. He does not plead his case. There is no defense. Instead, he reaches out, his fingers straining toward the source of the light. He casts aside the last fragments of his own will, choosing to trust in the offer of grace that has been present all along. His heart beats against his ribs like a trapped bird. High above, the gavel begins its descent, moving with the finality of a closing door. He closes his eyes, bracing for the strike, surrendering everything to the mercy he finally understands. The silence holds. It is not the silence of an end, but of a threshold. Two paths manifest before him, etched into the foundation of the void. To the left, a landscape of restoration emerges, where the light is constant and the air carries the clarity of a mountain dawn. It is a place where every broken thing is mended, where the discord of history is replaced by a profound, rhythmic peace. To the right, the terrain shifts into a state of absolute separation, a dark expanse where the light of the throne cannot reach. It is a place of isolation, cold and hollow, where the echoes of the past find no place to rest. The man looks between them. The urgency is not a spoken command. It is the physical pressure of the decision itself. Every heartbeat feels like the ticking of a clock that has reached its final gear. This is not a choice made in the abstract, but a movement of the soul toward one of these two realities. The gravity of the decision ripples through the space, demanding an answer that defines the eternal. He stands at the divide, feeling the pull of the light against the void, knowing that the path he commits to now is the one he will walk forever. The stillness deepens, waiting for the final step. The man lifts his gaze. He sees the path of restoration, clears his mind of all remaining doubt, and takes the step. His foot touches the ground of the new reality. At that exact second, the gavel strikes. The sound is not a thunderclap, but a resonant, absolute note that vibrates through the very core of the void. The darkness that had clung to the edges of his vision evaporates like mist under a rising sun. The weight of his own history, the burdens of his past failures, and the confusion of his earthly search slide away, leaving him unencumbered. The throne of light expands, filling the horizon, and the divide between the two destinations seals shut. The courtroom, the road, the garden, and the centuries of human struggle vanish, replaced by a stillness that is active and alive. He breathes in, and the air is fresh with the scent of renewal. The separation is over. The pursuit has ended. The final gavel strike echoes once, then fades into a silence that is no longer heavy, but perfect. He is no longer standing in the shadow of judgment. He is standing in the dawn of an eternal beginning. Justice is complete, and the story of time gives way to the permanence of forever.